big 0-2 in this series. So maybe a Pokemon that both sides will consider either not selecting or thinking their opponent will expect them not to select after the Pokemon selection they made in their losing games.
Yeah, and the Pokemon that has come up huge for Toler is Politoed, out on the field immediately alongside Gardevoir, and Raphael with his own Gardevoir and Heatran. And if I had to choose my Gardevoir partners in this case, probably Politoed.
Yeah, Water-type Pokemon, pretty good against Fire-type Pokemon.
Funny how that works out.
Yeah, I mean, that type chart is a thing. However, it's not quite as simple as it looks here. I think the combination of Gardevoir and Politoed are going to have a hard time getting a one-hit KO on this Gardevoir. So if Raphael does want to finally bust out that Trick Room and his Pokemon in the back that he can pull it off with, the option is there this time. However, if not, certainly the type chart being a thing makes the situation a little bit complicated. And Politoed is a tough Pokemon to switch into for the most part for Raphael. Other than Amoonguss, there's really not much that can switch in safely, and even then you have to look out for an Ice Beam. Cool to see Politoed, period, by the way. We very rarely see it when it's not paired with something like Ludicolo or Kingdra with Swift Swim, but clearly working pretty well here as Toler is a game away from becoming the national champion.
Yeah, both players are now a game away from becoming the national champion. So this first turn, you can see both players thinking over their moves for the entirety of their allotted time. Gardevoir retreats for Toler, doesn't want to stick around and take a Flash Cannon from Heatran. Aegislash now back on the field for Toler. That Pokemon was missing last game, and it looks like Toler decided that he missed it quite a bit. Raphael will Mega Evolve his own Gardevoir. It doesn't need to run away from anything. Politoed's protecting Mega Gardevoir, and Heatran then will now be able to deal damage to any Pokemon. And Earth Power again catches the Aegislash switch in. Again, about 50% HP taken by that Aegislash from that Life Orb Heatran. Hyper Voice from Mega Gardevoir. Going to deal some good damage as well to that Aegislash. Probably in range for, before the leftovers, would have been in range for a second Hyper Voice, but an amazing read there from Raphael, catching that Aegislash on the switch-up.
Yeah, the Canadian delegation really enjoyed that one, and Aegislash just healthy enough now that, as you mentioned, a Hyper Voice probably can't pick it off, though Heat Wave would if Heatran wants to have the guts there. Definitely an important Pokemon in this matchup for both players are Steel type. The Mega Gardevoir is huge in this matchup. Neither side has really amazing solutions to it other than their Steel type Pokemon. Both of them using Flash Cannon, even though for Heatran that's pretty irregular. And the Heatran on Raphael's side being healthy, the Aegislash and Toler's being so weakened could really change this matchup in the way that Gardevoir gets controlled. Neither side can afford to let just stand there in Hyper Voice.
Yeah, exactly. Especially with the Mega Gardevoir mirror, having your Steel type healthy is probably one of the most important things you can have.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's important to be able to keep the counter to your most important Pokemon on the opposing side alive long enough to take care of what it needs to beat, and Aegislash might not be able to do it.
Well, we'll have to see if Aegislash can do it. Both Steel types this round opting to protect instead of making an attack. Gardevoir just going for another Hyper Voice will only damage the Politoed this time. We've seen that Politoed, very bulky, able to protect itself from a lot of damage. Scald into the Heatran's Protect, so that's just free damage for Raphael. Another great call, making the correct moves, and Aegislash, though, slowly healing up with that leftovers.
Now, this is a turn where now it's going to have to be Toler that makes the correct call. That was a couple turns in a row where Raphael won. Politoed now in range to be knocked out by a Hyper Voice. It's possible for Aegislash to try to protect it with Wide Guard, but I think a protected switch is more likely, as we're likely going to see here, because a single target on both Pokemon could also pick up that knockout.
Yep, Aegislash switches out for the Landorus. We'll have to see if Landorus this time can pick up a win. Has not picked up a win yet. Politoed protecting. Raphael going to be able to make more attacking moves here. Earth Power into the Landorus switch in. Psyshock from Gardevoir into the Politoed. Toler needed to make that play. He did, and now he's in a pretty good position.
Yeah, he's definitely in a much better position now. He's got a healthy Pokemon in the field. Politoed could choose to go for a suicidal helping hand if it wants to here to try and get rid of that enemy Gardevoir, which is so important, and that might be something that has to happen here. He has to find ways to get damage on this Gardevoir without using too much of Aegislash's health. It's pretty much done what it can, and we're not too surprised if we only see it at this point to either switch in to protect something else from a knockout, which could happen here even if he's afraid of a target on Politoed. But with Heatran switching, it's a little bit less danger, only really a Hyper Voice likely to come the other way, and more likely to protect.
Yeah, Raphael trying to protect his Pokemon from an Earthquake. As you mentioned, that helping hand from Politoed, Earthquake from that banded Landorus. Will be able to take out the Politoed. Will it be able to take out the Gardevoir as well? Both Pokemon go down, Politoed and the Mega Gardevoir. Raphael protects his Heatran by switching in that Thundurus, but again, taking out that Mega Pokemon really big for Toler.
Yeah, that's exactly the play needed. Like I mentioned, he kind of had to find a different way to get rid of that Mega Gardevoir and was able to do it. With that Choice Band in the helping hand, more than enough to get the knockout, though. Landorus being locked into Earthquake now and intimidated puts Raphael still probably in the better position, though it's hard to be upset about that one if you're Toler, considering where he was. A little bit surprised to see that play in the previous turn, though. I was kind of expecting to see the opposite play with Thundurus switching in to deal with the Earthquake and Heatran protecting, since Gardevoir had protected on the previous turn and Heatran hadn't. Raphael sort of playing for it, but sometimes sacrificing Pokemon isn't the worst thing. He's still an advantage in this game. Landorus would really like to switch, but that's going to expose Toler's very important final Pokemon to damage. Aegislash already so weakened. Dangerous turn for Toler.
Well, Toler is going to take the risk and switch out for his Gardevoir again. Now that Aegislash already weakened, will it be able to survive this turn? Aegislash uses King Shield, does not want to take any damage. It's way too low, just wants to heal up a little bit more with those leftovers. Swagger from Thundurus hits the Gardevoir on the switch in. Would have been really dangerous to hit that Landorus as well. Gardevoir now confused. Knockoff from Scrafty into the Aegislash slot. Takes that King Shield debuff now. So Scrafty not going to be able to deal that much damage anymore.
Yeah, I don't think it was going to be doing too much damage anyway. And now with the threat of Hyper Voice coming the other way, it's not too. It's actually relatively likely that just try to knock off Aegislash again. If it gets knocked out, it gets knocked out. A little bit dangerous to do too much else with it, but it keeps Aegislash honest there, and that's sort of a big deal. Raphael's in a better position, so by knockoffing that slot, if Aegislash had chosen to get aggressive and attack instead, which players are likely to do when they're losing, able to avoid any potential surprises of losing control.
Well, it looks like Toler just wanted to reset the choice lock on his Landorus. Landorus coming back in, another Intimidate on that Scrafty. If Scrafty is going to stick around, it's definitely not dealing any damage. Raphael knows that, switches back for that Heatran in the back. Heatran now on the field against the Aegislash and the Landorus. Thundurus using Swagger again, just trying to spread that confusion on Toler's team. Now Aegislash confused, heightened attack. Could be very dangerous if it hits itself in its own confusion. Switches over to the Blade form. Aegislash takes a lot of damage if it hits itself in its own confusion. Will it be able to get the attack off? No, it hits itself in its own confusion. Barely holds on, though. Those leftovers really coming up huge. Aegislash down to the red again just because it wanted to go for an attack.
That's a big deal, though. If it had been able to hit Heatran, you could have gotten to the point where maybe 2 Rock Slides from Landorus could have knocked it out here and given Toler more options on what move he's going to lock into. He really doesn't want to Earthquake in this situation because it's going to limit his offense with this other Pokemon very significantly. So that's a really tough attack for Toler, especially now because if it King Shields and hits itself in confusion, there's a good chance it's going to knock itself out, and that prevents Landorus from switching moves then with only 2 Pokemon remaining. You mentioned previously how important it is to not be the player who gets down to 2 Pokemon first, and that's definitely going to be the case there, even with this powerful Choice Band Landorus threatening a bunch of damage the other way. With this Thundurus having that swagger we've seen so much of instead of hidden power.
Well, Thundurus switching out for Scrafty. Raphael does not want to let that banded Landorus just deal a lot of damage to his Pokemon. So Aegislash now going to, it looks like, try for the King Shield. It's confused. It hits itself in its own confusion again. And Aegislash knocks itself out. Toler with that Landorus now. Is Landorus going to be able to pick up a KO here? The superpower onto Heatran through the Intimidate. Does pick up the KO. Heatran goes down. And now it's Landorus Therian and that Gardevoir in the back against the Scrafty and the Thundurus for Raphael. And Scrafty, it's not going to want to stare down that Mega Gardevoir. It needs some help from Thundurus.
That it does. Scrafty, not a Pokemon that typically carries Protect or Detect. Instead it has that Fake Out and usually Assault Vest. But Assault Vest is not going to protect you from Hyper Voice from Mega Gardevoir. Very likely we'll see a Protect from Gardevoir here, trying to avoid getting Thunder Waved or Swaggered before it can get an attack off in Scrafty. And this game could come down to dice rolls. The Gardevoir's special defense is pretty strong. So for as far behind as Toler looked and for having to lock Landorus into that superpower that's now reduced its attack and defense by 1 stage, Mega Gardevoir may be able to finish this one off as long as it can get those Hyper Voices off.
Doesn't it just feel right for the tournament to come down to potentially some swagger rolls?
Yeah, we've seen this one before, and one thing that's going to be interesting here too is dealing with Landorus. There isn't a great way to do damage to it, so even though that superpower is not going to do very much damage, Landorus is still a problem, and if it knocks out Scrafty before that Swagger can help Scrafty knock out Gardevoir, Thundurus is in trouble.
Yeah, well, Gardevoir is going to protect itself, hoping for Landorus to get some damage off. Smart fake out from Raphael, though, doesn't let Landorus make a move here, fakes it out. while Raphael goes for the swagger on Mega Gardevoir. So both players going a little bit conservative. Toler definitely just wanted to make sure that he burnt that fake out, though.
Yeah, that was the right play by Raphael, though. I mean, it's tempting to fake out Gardevoir instead to stop the Hyper Voice, but save some damage on Scrafty. If the swagger works, it'll matter.
Here comes the swagger from Thundurus onto Gardevoir. Gardevoir trying to get off an attack. This is 4th of July weekend. We'll see if it can do it. Superpower from the Landorus onto Scrafty. Of course, not that powerful. Still deals a little bit of good damage onto Scrafty, though. Mega Gardevoir confused. Is it going to happen? No! Gardevoir hits itself in its own confusion. Super Fang from Scrafty onto Landorus. Takes about half of the remaining HP onto Landorus, and now that confusion onto Mega Gardevoir, making sure that Toler could not get any damage off.
Yeah, playing the odds, though, is Raphael. I was expecting that Super Fang and Gardevoir could have taken it, weakened enough to be knocked out by a Thunderbolt here. Instead, relying on the Thunder Wave and the confusion for Gardevoir not to end this game with Hyper Voice.
Speaking of playing the odds, going to paralyze that Mega Gardevoir again. Another superpower from Landorus, not going to pick up the KO on Scrafty yet. So again, that Scrafty still around, confused, paralyzed. Gardevoir gets the Hyper Voice off. Do you believe in Poke Miracles? Toler Webb gets the Hyper Voice off, takes down the Scrafty, deals damage to that Thundurus, and now Thundurus on the field really needs to get a lot more rolls.
Yeah, a lot of rolls. You know, a single Hyper Voice from Gardevoir is going to end this game. Unless Landorus chooses the Superpower Thundurus, a little bit of a strange situation here, but actually doesn't want to activate that Citrus Berry, potentially taking an extra turn for Gardevoir if it does.
Another swagger for Raphael onto Landorus. That Choice Banded now fully boosted. Landorus hits the confusion as well. Still around thanks to those superpower drops, actually. Gardevoir confused and paralyzed, hits itself again. So Raphael just barely holding on. He wants to take that title back to Canada, but he's going to need a lot more help.
Yeah, we're going to see a few more rolls here, and the clock is also ticking down. If Landorus knocks itself out here, it's actually going to be advantage Raphael with the health remaining. He could be able to win a tie.
All right, it's going to keep happening. Landorus is confused. Superpower from Landorus goes through onto Thundurus. Deals a little bit of damage. Of course, resisted. Will pop the Citrus Berry, though, as Landorus drops its own stats once more. There's that Citrus Berry going to heal Thundurus back up. Probably putting it in a position where it's more healthy than it started. A little close. Thundurus using Thunderbolt onto Gardevoir. Going to deal damage as well. Gardevoir snaps out of confusion. Gets the Hyper Voice up. Is not paralyzed. And Toler